The iron chains bit into Rose's wrists as two vampire guards dragged her across the obsidian floor of the High Council chamber. Her knees scraped against the polished stone, and she could feel 300 pairs of crimson eyes fixed on her trembling form. The vaulted ceiling disappeared into shadows above, and the torches cast dancing light across the faces of vampires who watched her humiliation with cold satisfaction. "Kneel before the council," the guard on her right commanded, shoving her down with enough force to make her gasp. Rose's palms hit the freezing marble, and she forced herself to lift her chin despite the terror clawing at her throat. She had worked in the Crimson Keep for 5 years, cleaning the ancient corridors and dusting the forbidden archives, always keeping her head down, always staying invisible among the immortals who ruled the night. She had been careful, so careful, never meeting their eyes, never speaking unless spoken to, never drawing attention to herself or her younger sister Violet, who worked in the kitchens below. And now, because of one terrible accident, everything had shattered. Ella Ravencroft descended the steps from the council dais with serpentine grace, her crimson gown flowing like fresh blood across the black marble. She was beautiful in the way all ancient vampires were beautiful, with porcelain skin that had never seen sunlight and eyes like polished onyx. Her dark hair cascaded over her shoulders in perfect waves, and when she smiled, her fangs gleamed like ivory daggers in the torchlight. She was also the cruelest creature Rose had ever encountered, and the smirk playing at her perfect lips promised nothing but suffering. "Do you know what you've done, little human?" Ella's voice dripped with false sweetness as she circled Rose like a predator studying wounded prey. "Do you have any comprehension of the magnitude of your transgression?" Rose's throat was too tight to speak. She tried to form words, tried to explain, but all that emerged was a strangled whisper. "It was an accident. I didn't mean to." The slap came so fast Rose didn't see it. Her head snapped sideways and she tasted copper. The assembled vampires leaned forward in their seats, their nostrils flaring at the scent of her blood. "Silence!" Ella's voice cracked through the chamber like a whip. "You entered the sealed vault. You broke the sanctified wards that have protected that chamber for 3,000 years. And you filthy, worthless human, you opened the Elder's coffin." Gasps rippled through the crowd. Rose's vision blurred with tears as she pressed her palm against her burning cheek. She wanted to explain that she'd been sent to the vault by a note slipped under her door, written on parchment bearing the council's seal, instructing her to clean the chamber immediately. She wanted to say that. When she'd arrived, the wards were already broken, the door already open, the ancient coffin already unsealed. She wanted to tell them that she'd only looked inside because she'd heard a sound, a whisper that seemed to call her name. But who would believe a human servant over Ella Ravencroft, daughter of the ancient bloodlines, promised bride to the Vampire King's own brother? "What is the charge, specifically?" The voice that spoke made every vampire in the room fall silent. Rose's heart stuttered as she lifted her eyes to see a figure emerging from the shadows at the back of the chamber. Lord Enzo Nightshade moved with the fluid grace of a predator who had never known fear, his tall frame cutting through the assembled nobility like a blade through silk. He was the Vampire King's most trusted commander, 800 years old and powerful enough to make even the ancient council members lower their eyes. His midnight black hair fell past his shoulders, and his eyes gleamed like molten silver in the torchlight. He wore black leather and steel that spoke of warfare rather than courtly games, and when those silver eyes swept across the room and landed on Rose, She felt the air leave her lungs. She had glimpsed him only once before, from across the castle gardens during a summer festival. He had been surrounded by guards and nobility, and she had pressed herself against a stone wall, making herself small and invisible as he passed. Even from that distance, she had felt the pull of him, something in her chest tightening with a recognition she didn't understand. Now those silver eyes were locked on her, and she couldn't look away. "I asked a question," Enzo said, his voice carrying effortlessly through the vast chamber despite its soft tone. "What specifically is this human accused of?" Ella's expression flickered with irritation before smoothing back into cold satisfaction. "Lord Enzo, how fortunate you've returned from the Northern Territories in time to witness justice." She gestured toward Rose with one pale hand. "This servant broke into the sealed vault 3 nights ago. She destroyed wards that have stood since the First Age, and most damning of all, she opened the coffin of Elder Tobias, the founder of our bloodline, whose body has rested undisturbed for 3 millennia." The chamber erupted in hisses and snarls. Rose felt the weight of their hatred pressing down on her like a physical force. Elder Tobias was legend among the vampire clans, the first of their kind, the one who had walked in darkness when the world was young. His body had been sealed in sacred ground, protected by wards woven with blood magic and ancient oaths. The idea that a human could break those wards was impossible. The idea that she would dare to open his coffin was blasphemy. "I didn't break anything," Rose whispered, but her voice was lost in the chaos. "Silence!" Enzo's single word carried enough power to make every vampire in the room freeze. He descended the steps from the back gallery with deliberate slowness, and the crowd parted before him like water before a blade. When he stopped 3 paces from where Rose knelt, she could feel the cold radiating from his immortal body, could smell leather and night air and something darker that called to a part of her she didn't understand. "The wards on the sealed vault respond only to royal blood. They cannot be broken by human hands, no matter how determined." His gaze shifted to Ella. "So either this servant is lying about entering the vault, or someone with royal blood opened it first." Ella's jaw tightened almost imperceptibly. "Perhaps the wards simply failed after so many centuries. Ancient magic does decay, after all." "The wards were renewed 50 years ago. I was present for the ritual." Enzo's attention returned to Rose, and she felt pinned by that silver stare like a butterfly on a collector's board. "Tell me what happened. Every detail." Rose's hands trembled as she tried to steady her breathing. She could feel the weight of the entire chamber watching her, waiting for her to condemn herself. 3 nights ago, someone slipped a note under my door. It bore the council's seal and instructed me to report to the sealed vault immediately for emergency cleaning. When I arrived, the door was already open. The wards were already broken. I could see the damage to the door frame, the burn marks where the magic had been torn away. "And yet you entered anyway." "I thought the council had sent for me. I thought it was my duty." Rose's voice cracked, but she forced herself to continue. "The chamber was dark. I could barely see. I heard a sound like someone calling my name, and I followed it to the center of the room where the elder's coffin sat on a stone platform. The lid was already open, just a crack, but open. And when I got close, I heard the voice again, louder this time, and She stopped, her courage failing. How could she explain what had happened next? How could she tell them that when she'd looked into the coffin, she'd seen not a desiccated corpse, but a figure made of starlight and shadow? That the elder's eyes had opened, glowing with ancient fire, and he'd reached for her with hands that seemed to pass through reality itself. That his lips had moved, forming words in a language she didn't know, and then his entire form had dissolved into smoke that poured into her chest like water into an empty vessel. The coffin had been empty when the guards found her moments later. Completely empty, as if it had never held anything at all. And Rose had been on her knees beside it, gasping for air, feeling something vast and terrible settling beneath her ribs like a second heartbeat. You looked inside, Enzo, finished for her. And something happened. Something you can't explain. Rose's eyes snapped to his face. There was no mockery in his expression, no condemnation, only a terrible, focused intensity that made her feel as if he could see straight through her flesh to whatever now resided inside her. Yes, my lord. Ella laughed, the sound like breaking glass. Oh, this is rich! The little servant thinks she had some mystical experience. She turned to address the council, her voice rising. Clearly, the girl broke into the vault, hoping to steal whatever treasures the elder was buried with. When she found the coffin empty, as it has been for centuries, the elder's body long since turned to dust, she concocted this ridiculous story about notes and voices to excuse her crime. But the coffin wasn't empty, Rose protested. I saw him. I saw the elder. He was real. He was... Enough of your lies. Ella's hand shot out, grabbing Rose by the throat and lifting her off the ground with casual, terrifying strength. Rose clawed at the vampire's wrist, her feet dangling above the marble, her lungs screaming for air. You are human trash, a blood bag with delusions of importance. The punishment for desecrating the elder's tomb is death, and I will personally ensure you suffer every moment of it. Rose's vision was going dark at the edges when a hand closed around Ella's wrist. Enzo stood beside them, his expression carved from stone, his silver eyes blazing with cold fire. Release her, now. For a heartbeat, Ella didn't move. Her fingers tightened around Rose's throat, and Rose felt consciousness slipping away like water through her fingers. Then Enzo's hand flexed, and Rose heard bone crack. Ella gasped and dropped her, stumbling backward with her wrist held against her chest. Rose hit the marble hard, gasping and coughing, her throat burning. How dare you! Ella's beautiful face contorted with rage. She is guilty! The evidence is clear! Are you so blinded by— The evidence is circumstantial at best, Enzo interrupted, his voice dropping to something that made the temperature in the room plummet. And you've just assaulted the accused before the council has rendered judgment. That is a violation of the sacred laws of trial. Step back, Ella, before I forget that you're betrothed to my brother and treat you like any other vampire who defies protocol. The chamber had gone so silent, Rose could hear her own ragged breathing. Ella stared at Enzo with naked hatred burning in her black eyes, but she retreated, melting back into the shadows near the council dais. Rose pushed herself to her hands and knees, her throat aching, her mind reeling. Why was Enzo defending her? What did he see that made him question the obvious narrative? This trial is a farce, Enzo announced, turning to face the assembled council. The accused has been given no opportunity to defend herself, no time to gather evidence, and no advocate to speak on her behalf. These proceedings violate every tenet of vampire law established in the First Covenant. Lord Enzo, with all respect, this is a matter of, one of the council members began. With all respect, Counselor Damien, this is a matter of justice, and you've already decided to execute her without a fair hearing. Enzo's gaze swept across the 12 council members seated in their high-backed thrones. Or perhaps justice isn't the goal. Perhaps someone wanted this human in the vault. Perhaps someone with royal blood opened those wards and left them broken, knowing a curious servant would investigate. Perhaps this entire spectacle is designed to cover up something far more significant. Murmurs rippled through the crowd. Rose saw several council members exchange glances, their immortal faces unreadable. Ella's expression had gone very still, very careful. "I invoke right of inquiry," Enzo said, and the chamber erupted. Right of inquiry was ancient law, older than the council itself. It gave any vampire of royal blood the authority to investigate crimes that involved sacred relics or the founder's legacies. It also meant that Rose's fate was now in Enzo's hands rather than the council's, and no one, not even Ella, could overrule him without challenging his authority directly. "This is outrageous!" Damien stood from his throne, his skeletal frame trembling with barely contained rage. "The girl is obviously guilty. She admitted to entering the vault, to opening the coffin." "She admitted to finding the vault already open and investigating a disturbance," Enzo corrected. "There is a difference, and I intend to discover the truth. The human will remain in my custody until my investigation is complete. Anyone who interferes will answer to me personally." He turned to Rose, extending one hand. She stared at it for a moment, unable to process what was happening. Then slowly, carefully, she placed her palm in his. His skin was cold as marble, but his grip was gentle as he pulled her to her feet. The moment their skin made contact, Rose felt something crack open inside her chest. That second heartbeat, the one that had been whispering beneath her ribs for 3 days, suddenly roared to life. Power flooded through her veins like liquid fire, and she saw Enzo's eyes widen with shock. He felt it too. Whatever had happened in that coffin, whatever the elder spirit had done when it poured into her body, Enzo recognized it. "Come with me," he said quietly, his hand still holding hers. "We're leaving. Now." Rose followed in a daze as Enzo led her through the stunned crowd. Vampires pressed against the walls to let them pass, their faces twisted with confusion and outrage. She could feel Ella's gaze burning into her back, could sense the promise of vengeance radiating from the ancient vampire like heat from a forge. But Enzo's presence beside her was a shield, his power a wall that no one dared cross. They walked through corridors of black stone lit by flickering torches, past tapestries depicting ancient battles and portraits of long-dead vampire lords. Rose's mind spun with questions she didn't dare ask. Why had Enzo defended her? What had he felt when they touched? Where was he taking her now? Finally, they reached a heavy wooden door carved with symbols Rose didn't recognize. Enzo pushed it open to reveal a chamber that took her breath away. Books lined every wall from floor to ceiling, thousands of them, their leather spines gleaming in the light of a massive fireplace. Maps and scrolls covered a central table, and weapons hung on display above the mantel. Swords and daggers that looked older than kingdoms. "This is my private study," Enzo said, releasing her hand and moving to pour something from a crystal decanter into 2 glasses. "No one can enter without my permission. You're safe here, at least for the moment." Rose stood frozen just inside the door, her throat still aching from Ella's grip, her mind still reeling from everything that had happened. Why did you help me? You don't know me. You don't owe me anything. Enzo turned to face her, extending one of the glasses. Drink this. It will help with the pain. Rose took the glass with trembling hands and sipped. The liquid was sweet and warming, sliding down her abused throat like honey. She felt the pain ease almost immediately, felt her breathing grow steadier. Thank you, my lord. My name is Enzo, and I helped you because Ella was lying. He moved to stand before the fireplace, his profile limned in golden light. I've known her for 300 years. Since she was a child begging her father to let her train with the warriors. She's brilliant, ambitious, and utterly ruthless. She's also been obsessed with power for as long as I've known her, desperate to elevate her family's standing in the vampire hierarchy. Rose's fingers tightened around the glass. I don't understand what that has to do with me. 3 weeks ago, I received word from my brother Dorian that Ella had been asking questions about the sealed vault, specifically about what would happen if the elder's coffin were opened. Enzo's gaze turned to her, and Rose felt the full weight of his attention like a physical force. Vampires don't age, Rose. We don't sicken. But we can still die if our bodies are destroyed completely. The elder Tobias was different. He transcended death itself, became something more than vampire. Legend says he sealed himself away, not because he was dying, but because his power had grown so vast, he feared what he might become. You think Ella wanted to open the coffin? To release him? I think Ella wanted to absorb his power. There are forbidden rituals, dark magics, that allow one vampire to consume another's essence if certain conditions are met. If she could access the elder's tomb, if she could perform the ritual before anyone discovered what she'd done, she could become the most powerful vampire in existence. He paused. But something went wrong. The coffin opened, yes, but you were there instead of Ella, and whatever power was meant for her went to you instead. Rose's glass slipped from her fingers and shattered on the stone floor. She stared at Enzo, her mind refusing to process his words. That's impossible. I'm human. I don't have any power. I can't. Look at your hands. Rose looked down and gasped. Her skin was glowing. Faint traces of silver light moving beneath the surface like veins of starlight. As she watched, the light pulsed in time with that second heartbeat in her chest, growing brighter with each beat. What's happening to me? You're changing. The Elder's essence is merging with yours, rewriting your mortality from the inside out. Enzo moved closer, and Rose could see wonder in his silver eyes. I've lived 800 years and never witnessed anything like this. You're becoming something new, something that shouldn't be possible. I don't want this! I didn't ask for any of this! Rose backed away until her shoulders hit the bookshelf. Please, there has to be a way to undo it, to give the power back. I just want to go home. I want my sister to be safe. I want... Your sister is in danger. Enzo's words cut through her panic like a blade. Ella knows you have the Elder's power now. She felt it. In the council chamber, same as I did. She won't stop until she takes it from you. And she won't care who gets hurt in the process. Rose's knees buckled. She slid down the bookshelf until she was sitting on the floor, her arms wrapped around herself. Violet, she's only 16. She works in the kitchens. She doesn't know anything about this. Please, you have to protect her. I already have guards stationed outside the kitchens. Your sister won't be touched. Enzo crouched before her, his eyes level with hers. But you need to understand something, Rose. The power inside you isn't a curse. It's the Elder's final gift. He waited 3,000 years for someone worthy, someone pure enough to carry his legacy without being corrupted by it. That's why the coffin opened for you and not Ella. That's why his spirit chose you. I'm not worthy of anything. I'm just a servant. You're the girl who tried to protect a sacred relic instead of running when she found the vault breached. You're the sister who worked herself to exhaustion for 5 years to keep your siblings safe. You're the woman who looked Ella Ravencroft in the eye and spoke truth even when it meant death. Enzo's hand reached out slowly, giving Rose time to pull away if she wanted. When she didn't move, his fingers gently tilted her chin up. You are far more than you believe yourself to be. And I intend to prove it. Rose's breath caught. This close, she could see the silver flecks in his eyes, could feel the ancient power radiating from him like cold fire. For 5 years, she had lived in this castle and never dared to hope for anything beyond survival. She had accepted her place at the bottom of the hierarchy, had taught herself to be invisible, to want nothing, to expect nothing. But Enzo was looking at her as if she mattered, as if she were something precious and rare instead of disposable and common. And the part of her that had the Elder's power thrumming in her veins was starting to believe him. The door to the study exploded inward with a crash that made Rose scream. Ella stood in the doorway, her beautiful face contorted with rage, her black eyes blazing with madness. Behind her, 6 vampire warriors in blood-red armor filled the corridor. I knew it! Ella's voice was a shriek that echoed off the stone walls. I knew you'd take her side, Enzo! Just like you always take everyone's side except mine! Well, I'm done asking for permission. I'm done waiting for approval. That power belongs to me, and I will rip it from her corpse if I have to. Enzo was on his feet in an instant, his body positioned between Rose and Ella. You've lost your mind if you think you can attack someone under my protection in my own chambers. Your protection? Please. You're not even the king, just his lapdog brother. I am betrothed to Dorian, which makes me future queen. And I command these guards to seize the human and bring her to me for judgment. The 6 warriors shifted uncomfortably, their hands on their weapons but their eyes flickering between Enzo and Ella with obvious uncertainty. They knew Enzo's reputation, knew his power, but they also knew that defying Ella meant defying the future queen. These guards answer to the crown, not to you, Enzo said, his voice dropping to something that made frost appear on the windows. And as the crown's appointed investigator in this matter, I order you to stand down before you commit treason. Treason? I'm protecting our bloodline from contamination. Ella's hands clenched into fists, and Rose saw dark energy crackling around her fingers. That human has no right to the Elder's power. She's weak, worthless, beneath us in every way. I've spent 3 centuries studying the ancient texts, learning the forbidden rituals, preparing myself to carry that power. And she just stumbled into it like a fool finding gold in the dirt. Rose felt the truth hit her like a physical blow. Ella had orchestrated everything. The forged note, the broken wards, the open coffin. She had planned to perform her dark ritual and absorb the Elder's essence, had probably bribed or blackmailed someone with royal blood to open the vault for her. But Rose had arrived first, had interrupted the ritual, and the Elder Spirit had chosen her instead. "You killed him," Enzo said quietly. "You killed whoever opened the vault for you. That's why there's been no investigation into how the wards were broken. You made sure there were no witnesses." Ella's smile was terrible to behold. Lord Marcus was weak. He thought I loved him, thought I wanted to marry him instead of Dorian. He would have done anything for me, including betraying his own blood oath to protect the vault. And when he'd served his purpose, well, accidents happen in dark corridors, don't they? The guards behind her looked shocked, their hands moving away from their weapons. Confessing to murdering a vampire of royal blood was a death sentence, even for someone betrothed to the future king. But Ella didn't seem to care. She was beyond reason now, consumed by rage and thwarted ambition. "Ella Ravencroft, I arrest you for the murder of Lord Marcus Thornfield and for conspiracy to commit sacrilege against the Elder's tomb. Surrender now, and I'll ensure you receive a fair trial." A fair trial? Oh, Enzo, you always were naive. Dark energy exploded from Ella's hands, blasting toward him with enough force to level a building. Enzo raised one hand, and the attack dissipated like smoke against an invisible barrier. But the explosion had created enough chaos for Ella to dart forward with vampire speed, her claws extended, reaching for Rose's throat. Rose saw her coming, saw those black eyes filled with murder, saw death approaching in the form of a beautiful monster, and something inside her snapped. The Elder's power erupted from Rose's chest in a wave of pure silver light that knocked Ella backward across the room. The ancient vampire hit the far wall hard enough to crack the stone, sliding to the floor with blood trickling from her mouth. Rose stood, and she was glowing now, her entire body wrapped in starlight, her eyes blazing with ancient fire. She could feel the Elder's consciousness inside her, not controlling her, but supporting her, lending her his strength. "Enough!" Rose's voice echoed with power that made the walls tremble. "I didn't ask for this power, but I won't let you hurt anyone else to take it from me. The Elder chose me for a reason, and I'm done apologizing for existing." Ella struggled to her feet, her perfect face twisted with hatred. "Pff, you think you've won? You think having his power makes you one of us?" She laughed, a broken, terrible sound. "You're still human trash, still worthless. And when I tell Dorian what you've done, when I show him how you've seduced his brother with stolen magic, he'll tear you apart himself. You won't be telling Dorian anything." Enzo moved faster than Rose could track, his hand closing around Ella's throat. "You confessed to murder. You attacked someone under royal protection, and you assaulted an officer of the crown in the execution of his duties. The penalty for any one of those crimes is death. For all three together, there is no mercy." The 6 guards had drawn their weapons now, but they were pointing them at Ella, not Enzo. They had heard her confession. They had seen her attack. Whatever loyalty they might have felt toward the future queen had shattered in the face of her crimes. Ella clawed at Enzo's wrist, but her strength was fading. "Dorian will never forgive you for this. He loves me. Dorian will understand that justice was served, and he'll mourn what you could have been if you'd chosen honor over ambition. Enzo's grip tightened, and Ella's eyes went wide. I'm sorry it ended this way, Ella. I truly am. Rose turned away as Enzo finished it. She heard the sound of bone breaking, heard Ella's final gasp, heard the thud of a body hitting the floor. When she looked back, Ella was gone, her body already beginning to turn to ash the way vampires did when their immortal life force was extinguished. In moments, nothing remained but dust that the wind from the broken door scattered across the stone floor. The guards knelt immediately, their fists pressed to their chests in the vampire salute. Lord Enzo, we stand witness to your righteous judgment. The traitor Ella Ravencroft has paid the price for her crimes. Enzo nodded wearily. Inform the council of what happened here. Tell them I'll make a full report at dawn. And someone find Lord Dorian. He needs to hear this from me before rumors spread. The guards departed swiftly, leaving Rose and Enzo alone in the destroyed study. Books had been knocked from shelves, furniture overturned, and one entire wall bore the scorch marks from Ella's dark magic. Rose felt the Elder's power settling back into her bones, the glow fading from her skin until she looked almost human again. Almost, but not quite. Something fundamental had changed inside her. Is it over? Rose asked quietly. Am I safe now? Enzo turned to face her, and Rose saw something in his eyes that made her breath catch. Not just relief or satisfaction, but something deeper. Something that looked almost like awe. You were magnificent. That power, the way you wielded it without training, without hesitation, it was extraordinary. I didn't really do anything. It just sort of happened. You defended yourself and stood up to someone who terrified you. That takes courage. He moved closer, and Rose noticed absently that his hands were shaking slightly. When she attacked you, when I thought I might not be fast enough to stop her, I felt something I haven't felt in 800 years. Fear. Real, visceral terror at the thought of losing you. Rose's heart hammered against her ribs. Why? You barely know me. I know you have the Elder's power inside you, which means you're immortal now. Your human body is transforming, becoming something that can't die from age or disease. He reached out slowly, giving her time to step away. When she didn't move, his fingers traced the line of her jaw with heartbreaking gentleness. But more than that, I know you tried to protect a sacred relic instead of running. I know you worked yourself to exhaustion for 5 years to keep your sister safe. I know you stood before the council and told the truth, even when lying might have saved you. And I know that when you looked at me in that chamber, when our eyes met, I felt something I thought I'd lost centuries ago. What did you feel? Recognition. Like my soul had been searching for yours across an eternity and finally found home. His thumb brushed across her lower lip. The Elder chose you for a reason, Rose. Not just because you were pure of heart, but because he knew what you would become, what we could become together. Rose's eyes widened. Together? I'm 800 years old. I've commanded armies and negotiated treaties and fought wars that rewrote the map of the world. I've seen empires rise and fall. I've watched humans I cared about grow old and die, while I remained frozen in time. His other hand came up to cup her face, and Rose leaned into the touch despite herself. I stopped believing I would ever find someone who could stand beside me as an equal. Someone who could understand the weight of immortality without being crushed by it. Someone who could match my power without fearing it. I'm not powerful, I'm just... You have the essence of the first vampire inside you. You've been chosen by the founder of our race to carry his legacy into the future. You're not just powerful, Rose. You're going to reshape everything we thought we knew about what vampires can be. He leaned closer, his forehead nearly touching hers. And I would be honored to stand beside you while you do it. Rose felt tears streaming down her face, but they weren't tears of fear or sadness. They were tears of relief, of hope, of feeling seen for the first time in her life. My sister, Violet, she can't. I won't leave her behind. Your sister will have a place of honor in this court, not as a servant, but as family. Enzo smiled, and Rose felt her heart turn over in her chest. I'll protect both of you with everything I have. I swear it on my blood and my name. Why are you being so kind to me? Because you deserve kindness, and because I suspect I'm falling in love with you. The words hung in the air between them like a prayer. Rose stared up at this ancient, powerful vampire who had defended her when no one else would, who had saved her life and her sister's, who was looking at her now as if she were something precious beyond measure. And she realized with startling clarity that she was falling in love with him too. I don't know how to be what you need me to be. I don't know how to be immortal or powerful or... You don't have to know anything right now, except that you're not alone anymore. Enzo's thumb wiped away her tears with infinite gentleness. We'll figure out the rest together, one night at a time. Rose nodded, unable to speak past the emotion clogging her throat. Enzo pulled her into his arms, and she went willingly, burying her face against his chest. He was cold as marble, but his embrace felt like safety, like shelter, like home. And when the Elder's power hummed in harmony with Enzo's ancient strength, Rose felt something settle deep in her bones, a certainty that this was right, that everything that had happened, the accident, the trial, the transformation, had led her exactly where she needed to be. The sun was rising when Enzo finally released her, painting the sky beyond the shattered windows in shades of pink and gold. Rose stood at the window and watched the light spread across the castle grounds, no longer afraid of the day. She was something new now, something the world had never seen. A human, touched by the first vampire's power, chosen to carry his legacy, claimed by an ancient lord who saw her worth when everyone else saw only a disposable servant. Enzo came to stand beside her, his hand finding hers and lacing their fingers together. The council will want to question you extensively. They'll want to understand what you've become, what the Elder's power means for the future of our race. Let them question me. I'm not afraid anymore. Rose turned to face him, and she could see her reflection in his silver eyes. No longer the scared, invisible servant, but something radiant and strong. I spent 5 years making myself small, trying not to be noticed, hoping just to survive. But the Elder gave me this power for a reason, and I'm done hiding. That's my girl. Enzo lifted their joined hands and pressed a kiss to her knuckles. Whatever happens next, whatever challenges we face them together. I'll stand beside you while you reshape the world. And I'll stand beside you while you protect it. They stood together as dawn broke fully over the vampire kingdom and Rose felt the elder's presence inside her like a warm approval. She didn't know what the future held, didn't know how the council would react to her transformation or what it would mean to be immortal. But she knew she had Enzo beside her, knew her sister was safe, knew she had been given a second chance at life that most humans never dreamed of. She had been rejected, humiliated, and sentenced to death for a crime she didn't commit. But in the darkest moment, when all hope seemed lost, she had been chosen by power older than kingdoms to become something extraordinary. And now, standing in the light of a new day with the vampire lord's hand in hers, Rose understood that sometimes the worst moments of our lives are just the beginning of the best ones. Sometimes, the coffin we open by mistake contains not death, but destiny. And sometimes, the soul that fuses with ours is exactly the one we've been waiting for all along. Did you like this story? Do you want a part 2? Let me know your thoughts in the comments. Also, big shout out to our viewers from Fort Wayne, Indiana, USA, Canada, Michigan, London, Queensland, Birmingham, UK, Long Island, New York, Albany, Central Florida, California, Missouri. Thank you for being part of my small, humble community. To our growing viewers, comment below which state you're watching from so I can give you a shout out in the next video. Don't forget to subscribe so you can stay updated on our next uploads. Thanks for watching!